Business Comm students, welcome back. It is the beginning of week 3. I know I gave everyone a little extra time because of some of our Blackboard issues last week to complete assignments for this week. So get those into me as soon as possible. If you haven't already turned in your homework for chapters 2 and 3 from your Business Comm text. So this week, we are going to be jumping into a couple different areas. If you click on week 3, you will see we are going into chapters 4 and 5. And so this week, for chapters 4 and 5, I have a few things for us. So for chapter 4, revising business messages. And so when you remember at the beginning, you're going to read both chapters, right? You can read them in tandem, right? Read chapter 4 and chapter 5, or you can read chapter 4, review with the chapter 4 PowerPoint, and then do the homework questions for chapter 4, if that's how you like it better. That's probably how I would do it, but you can read them all and then do the homework questions at the end. It's up to you. All right, so chapter 4, revising business message. So there's a couple different sections in this chapter, and you know, some of the outcomes that we're looking for in this chapter first, we're going to make business messages more concise by rejecting something the text calls flabby expressions, long lead-ins, fillers, redundancies, all of those different things that we hate to read, so we want to avoid as business students and future business industry employees. We want to avoid writing ourselves. We want to try and clarify or use clarity in our messages, right? Keeping them simple, not using language that would be offensive or sharp, right? We don't want to turn our reader off or make any kind of discourse in the office place. And then third, we want to improve readability. So we want to make sure, have you ever gotten those emails, right, that are very confusing at work and you're not sure what exactly you're supposed to do or who you're supposed to report to, right, or a time frame. So we want to make sure we're just going to practice by looking at and critiquing, you know, some of the pitfalls that we see in business messages. And fourth, we're going to look at some proofreading areas, things you can do when you're sending out messages, right? How can you be it's hard to proofread your own items because you kind of naturally fall into whatever you already have written as being okay, right? So it's really hard to find errors and proofread your own messages. But how can we do that? There's some simple techniques. And then last, we're going to evaluate messages and then judge their effectiveness. Okay, so that's our chapter 4, revising business messages. So hopefully you enjoy that chapter 4 from the text. There's quite a few examples, and the text does a nice job of blocking things into, you know, like chunks, right? So that's easy to kind of go through each section. There's even a section that talks a little bit about different types of fonts, right? And when maybe to use those. So that is chapter 4. Now, chapter 5, and there are a couple things. You'll see some homework questions from chapter 4 in the homework questions, chapter 4 and 5 doc. And again, you write right on that doc, and then you can type right into that, save it, and then you're going to email me directly those homework questions for chapters 4 and 5. So that is one component of this week's things to be turned in. All right, and so then in chapter 5, when we are looking in the text, this week, workplace communication, right? So what are some of the things that, or workplace communication is the next section. So chapter 5, short workplace messages and digital media. All right, so when we're looking at, so in this unit, when we're talking about unit 2, we saw, and unit 2 and 3 kind of work nicely together, but unit 3 is all the communications, but it covers chapters 5, 6, 7, and 8. Chapter 5, in particular, short workplace messages and digital media. So some of the things that you are going to look at in chapter 5, right, are, or some of the outcomes that we would like to see at the end, right, are understanding emails, memos, and different standards from a professional outlook for your industry, right? Some industries are more formal than others. If you work in healthcare, there's certain ways that your individual place sends memos, right? If there's something that's pressing, how does that memo address you? And so start critiquing, as a student, you're going to critique some of the things that you see in the workplace. When you see a bad email, look at the email, say, does this make sense? Could it be written differently? So you can start quietly critiquing some of the things that are happening to you in your current workplace. All right. Looking at instant messaging. So we're going to kind of jump into what are some of those, what's the, text messaging and instant messaging? What are some of the protocols and pitfalls for those types of messaging formats? Let's see. Talking about podcasts and wikis, right, in this chapter. Blogging. I think when your homework questions, it has questions about how one might blog or start a blog, and how are those things important in this day and age, and maybe they weren't 20 years ago. And finally, some of the risks, the benefits and risks of social media, right? And so I remember when social media kind of took off as a business platform, right? So social media, I want to say around 2007, 2008, was still mostly just social media. People didn't have their business page. People just kind of advertised things randomly on their personal page until it became a big thing that you basically have to have a Facebook. A lot of businesses, even locally, a lot of restaurants that I go to their Facebook page, and I see then like what are their hours, what are some of their what's their special of the week, what's their special of the day, right? So sometimes I'll choose where I'm going to eat, friends, family, or whatever. I'll choose because I have a couple places I like and which one has the best special for the day. And I do that through social media, right? So if you're not updating your social media and capturing viewers, you won't have people coming into your restaurant. So really thinking about how you put, and a lot of you probably use social media to find out, different things that are happening in our local community, right? Whether it's a restaurant, whether it's a movie theater, whether it's, mini golf, whatever it might be, what are some of the specials? What are the hours? What's happening? And you do it through Facebook pages, right? Or other types of social media, Instagram. And so thinking about that in chapter 5, when you read chapter 5. Now, you'll do a quick review then of chapter 4 and 5 by viewing the PowerPoints that I have posted under week 3. Also, I have a short video for you that kind of pertains to chapter 5 and using emails in the workplace. So make sure you watch that video. It's a YouTube video, not mine personally. I try to add in some other videos, as you know, that are also other folks chiming in, right, that I think are pretty good for you guys to see. Now, the homework questions, I have a few from each chapter 4 and chapter 5. It is one document. And then there's also a second part of your homework this week. It's called a radical rewrite, and that is also listed there. It says chapter 5.2, radical rewrite. Okay, so for this radical rewrite, it's this blogger. You're going to analyze the following message and list 5 weaknesses. And then, and I have it on here, revise it if your instructor advises. I'm not going to have you do that this week. I'm just going to have you look at the message and list at least 5 weaknesses. Now, you can either do that right on this message because it's a Word doc, or you can highlight if you're able to highlight. Some of you are good with that. You can go ahead and highlight the different things in the email message, right, from Samantha Stager. You can highlight those errors or weaknesses and then comment on those. And that will be from this radical rewrite. But I don't want you don't have to actually rewrite it all, but I'm going to have you go through and pick out some weaknesses. So those 2 components, the chapter 4-5 homework and the 5.2 radical rewrite that talks about, it's an informational email, and find some weaknesses there. You can either send the weaknesses to me just in a separate document, or you can attach it to chapters 4 and 5, or you can use the radical rewrite. Just make sure that you're getting those weaknesses and your comments to me as part of your homework assignments for this chapter. There is no discussion this week. Next week, we will pick back up with a discussion post. If you have questions for me, please feel free to reach out at any time. You can text me 814-490-6473. You can also reach out via email, crobertson@ec3pa.org. And I will check back in with everybody later in the week to make sure that you are moving forward. Oh, grades. I am working on getting your grades out of my Excel and into the grade book here on Blackboard. I had some difficulty last week with Blackboard myself, so I am working on getting the grade book up and running. I hope by the end of the day today, if not by midday tomorrow. So just be patient, but peek in there for your grades. The only things that would be in there right now is I think you have one discussion and you have 2 homework assignments that have been sent in. If you sent me your homework and I responded, you sent it in a timely fashion, and you at least did the minimum amount of work, you get full credit for homework, right? Same with the discussion board. If you did not post to the discussion board, you don't get points. So make sure that you are going in and you are checking and you are completing all assignments, right? So I know there are a few discussions that haven't been posted yet from week 1. Now, homework, if you for some reason didn't hand in your first homework, make sure you get that to me to at least get some points on the board. And then try and get your homework here that's due for this week. I know I gave you a little extra time because of Blackboard issues and the holiday. Get that to me as soon as possible so that I can get that in your grade book. So just look for those. Hopefully either by the end of the day today or midday tomorrow, your grades will be up on Blackboard so you can see those. But if you've turned everything in, you have 100 so far, right? You've turned in both homework assignments and you've turned in the discussion. Boom, you're at 100, right? So questions for me, again, always feel free to reach out. Otherwise, have a wonderful week, and I will circle back around with you later in the week to make sure that you have all the assignments and are good to go.